Thank you so very much for having me on.
All right, so you're fairly new to South Africa, but the story of Mandela and the story of America and South Africa is certainly not new to you. Take us through your thoughts at this time that South Africa is going through, and indeed the world.
Well, it's of course a tremendous opportunity for self-reflection, as my president, President Obama, said a few days ago in F&B Stadium. I'm fortunate that I'm going to be able to travel to the Eastern Cape, to Kunu, to participate in the final going home ceremony for President Mandela. I have to tell you, as somebody who came to this country 23 years ago and has been fortunate enough to be back to see the arc of transformation here, it's nothing short of miraculous, and it gives me a real determination as the U.S. representative to work in partnership with South Africans to continue that important legacy.
So what if someone who saw South Africa 23 years ago, what would you say then has been a legacy of Madiba?
You know, I think that Madiba has been an example and a beacon, not just for South Africans, but for the entire world. Clearly, there's an important and profound message of reconciliation here in South Africa. But I want to go a step further. Much has been made of Madiba, who brings everyone together and reconciles, but we have to all remember that reconciliation really is only possible if there's true justice and if there's real equality in a society. And I think Nelson Mandela always exhorted us to make certain that we were creating a more broadly shared prosperity here and abroad. So that's the ongoing flame that we're all trying to move towards.
What role do you think that a hero such as Nelson Mandela has played in African American society? Because there was a time where there wasn't as much pride about being African was there in various countries around the world. I know that in Europe, in the UK, it was a situation, and in the US as well. Heroes like Madiba, have they helped change that pride within your country?
Oh, Peter, they have helped to change that tremendously. After being on air, I'm actually going to meet with a fairly large group of African Americans who have come here from our civil society to pay tribute to exactly what he meant. When I was growing up in the States, you're right, Africa was the mysterious dark continent. There was a sense that this was a place where only violence and poor health existed. But then Nelson Mandela, when he stepped out of that jail in 1990, so resolute, so incredibly dignified, and with a fiery grace, he sent he was a great example for black people everywhere and in the States of the stellar leadership, what it means to be in command of your own person and to provide real public service. So he's been, of course, a great example here, but a profound example to us as well in the United States. And you could hear that in President Obama's remarks a few days ago when he said that Madiba's example compels all of us to be better men and women.
What's your earliest memory of Madiba?
Oh, actually, the very first time I ever heard of Nelson Mandela, I was a child. I was born here in the Congo. My father always maintained a close tie to all things African. And I can remember being a kid and going out to a rally in the United States outside of the United Nations. And that's the first time I heard Nelson Mandela's name. And my father explained to me that this was a man who was prepared to give the best measure of himself on behalf of his people, was prepared to go to jail for life or give up his life for democratic freedoms for black South Africans. So from that moment, I knew this was a figure whose example would be in front of me my whole life. And then, of course, years later, I had the blessing to meet President Mandela on several occasions, and that was just absolutely glorious.
Tell us about the first meeting. How was that for you?
The first time I met him actually was a little embarrassing. I met him in New York City. How old was I? I was about 20 years old, and I was given responsibility for helping to organize his welcoming to the States shortly after he had been released from Robben Island. We put together this grand ticker tape parade for him down the Canyon of Heroes in Manhattan. Afterwards, he walked into New York City Hall, and I found myself alone with him in the mayor's office.
Wow.
And I must have been staring at him, lax-jawed, for a long time, because at some point I heard somebody say, "Pardon me, young man, can I trouble you for that glass of water?" And it became clear to me that he had been asking me for water for some time, but I was so dumbfounded in awe of him that I hadn't got it. So I rushed and got him the water and practically spilt it all over him. So yeah, that was the very first time. But immediately I was struck by his humility, his accessibility, and the way he made everyone around him feel as if they were the special one.
How was he received in the U.S.? You know, we see President Obama when he travels, he's got this magic dust that he leaves behind. Was that the same when Madiba made his trips to the U.S.? How was he received there?
Madiba's reception was incomparable. There's nothing that came before it or that's come since that could give you a sense of the aura that existed around that visit. Remember, this was somebody whose name we had been chanting for 2 decades, but we didn't even know what he looked like. We didn't know what he sounded like. When he arrived in the States, he received a hero's welcome, as is appropriate. It was the biggest thing ever. I remember being out in Yankee Stadium, gigantic Yankee Stadium, which was filled to the rafters, every seat filled with that man. And when I was backstage, when he put on his New York Yankees cap, a roar broke out of that crowd that was so thunderous that you would have thought the skies opened up. That man had magic.
Wow. As we're talking, I think people might be thinking that we're discussing an African-American story and experience, but it was all the communities in the U.S. that embraced him.
It was. It was completely inclusive. I should hasten to add that there were thousands of white college students in the United States who made a profound difference in the anti-apartheid fight. Once the United States finally passed sanctions against the apartheid regime in 1986, that was absolutely just conclusive and helped to turn the tide and make those walls come tumbling down. Those sanctions were only passed because of the work of those students. I can remember white and black students in places like Princeton University, Columbia University, Cornell University, who took over their institutions of higher learning and said, "We will not allow you to invest a penny into a regime that treats people this brutally, this subhumanly." So yes, that was a moment that was important to our whole country. And Nelson Mandela was embraced by all Americans.
All right, we're running out of time, but very briefly, how can we make sure that Madiba's memory continues to live on in your country and around the world?
Well, you know, I think the best way to do it is to have a measure of accountability. We need to use this moment as an interrogation of our present age. We can't just use Mandela's rhetoric. We've got to literally walk in his footsteps and do all we can to provide better outcomes for young people on education, healthcare, more broadly.
Okay, Ambassador Gaspard, thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us at this time. Okay, we're going to have to move very quickly to our next location, and everything's happening. There's a press conference taking place by the GCIS in Qunu. Let's go there now.